Good morning, you listen to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. This morning, my guest is Jack Raidy, who's president with W.F. Taylor. Jack, how you doing?
Good, Kemp. How are you?
I'm good. Good to have you on the line. I want to talk to you about some activity that's going on with the EPA and some of your solutions. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about business conditions, if you would. Tell us how business is out there.
Well, business seems to be picking up slightly year over year from last year. And we had a fairly solid year last year. At the end of the year, we put some good numbers on the board. So I am somewhat optimistic, that things are getting a little bit better out in the marketplace. The last housing data for on several fronts the last few days has made me wonder a little bit. But from that end, I think the commercial building is still held up fairly strongly in our end.
When you look at your business, is it about 50-50 commercial to residential, or do you have more on the commercial side?
No, we're primarily commercially oriented. From that, I think there's a pretty good adoption of carpet tile out there, and that growth trend continues. And we see that in the mix of adhesives that we're selling out in the marketplace versus broadloom today on the commercial side as well. So, but that business has held up fairly well. I think, there's some areas that seem stronger than others. But right now, I think I'm cautiously optimistic.
Well, that's good. I think, like you say, commercial's going to continue to ramp up, and we're just going to have to wait on housing. It's just going to be a little while for us to move through all this stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right, so just for those people that don't know about W.F. Taylor, give our listeners just a quick rundown on who you are.
Well, the Taylor Company has been a prime supplier of adhesives for the floor covering industry since the mid-'70s. It was founded by Wally Taylor, who passed away earlier this year, but he was a chemist by trade. And, he sold the company to a succession of British holding companies. And then in the late 80s, our family bought the company, and we've expanded ever since. So we're national in scope and international in at least in a few regards, and certainly throughout North America.
Yeah, and I'm talking to you out on the West Coast. I know you have an operation out there. I've been through it. You can eat off the floor out there. And you also have a facility here in Dalton, correct?
Yeah, we've had a major facility in Dalton almost since the inception of the company. So we've been in Dalton probably for 35 years or more. And actually, it's the largest of our operations. So about two-thirds of our business is shipped out of Dalton plant for the East Coast. And that's about consistent with population and market size, of course. And we do a tremendous amount of private labeling business for a lot of the manufacturers in the area there.
So if two-thirds of your business is here, what you doing out there?
Wally started the business out here, and it just kind of continued on as the headquarters. But we have a very good corporate team also in Dalton, so I think that gives us a lot of strength in covering the market on a national basis, just more so than if we were just West Coast oriented.
Yeah, a lot of people recognize that the adhesive people are, your compounders. You buy a bunch of raw materials, you put them together, and you make up your special recipes. And so raw materials have got to be a key factor. So talk a little bit about how that's affected.
Well, it's been a major issue since probably prior to the 08 correction and crash in Lehman Brothers and so forth. But, the materials have been running up consistently since then. And since demand has slackened, a lot of these major chemical suppliers have closed plants and rationalized their production as well. So, today there's shortages developing in certain key areas, and there's export markets that are like China and others that are taking up some of that production as well. But I think it's going to be a very challenging time going forward, and certainly oil prices jumping up and down in the 30% up and down range in the last couple of years every time you turn around have not helped. So right now, several key raw materials are exploding, and there's some shortages developing in butadiene, which feeds the styrene butadiene rubber market, which is primarily all your multi-purpose type carpet adhesives out there. And the acrylic market has also climbed with some of the dysfunctions in the supply chain as well. So it's going to be a challenging year. It was a challenging year last year, and looks like we're in for more of the same.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, the reason I want to talk to you, there has been an EPA chemical action plan that's been put together that deals with this whole polyurethane adhesives. I know you're more of an expert on it than me. Talk a little bit about that, if you will.
Well, the EPA plan from the Environmental Protection Agency, they released an action plan for chemicals that are used in urethane products. And those are primarily thiocyanates, which are MDI, which is a form of isocyanate. Most people probably recognize that as the compound that blew up in Bhopal, India, back, I think, in the 80s, killed many people in that plant. But MDI is a highly reactive chemical, and it can cause skin, eye, and lung irritation and asthma and chemical sensitization, but it's also absorbed through the skin and also absorbed when it's inhaled. So there's been, in the recent years, a increase in the use of adhesives and various foams and sealants, and a lot of people today are exposed to these risks, and maybe unknowingly so. In the early days, a lot of these things were in very highly regulated industries, and people had short-term durations of exposures and also were subject to a lot of personal protection devices and rules and that type of thing. So as it's moved out into the world of the do-it-yourselfers and consumers, it's on the EPA's list of being of big concern.
Okay. So you guys actually have had a solution for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, we've had alternate chemistry. About 10 years ago, we were faced with kind of a crossroads where we decided whether we wanted to get involved in urethane chemistry for the wood flooring industry for adhesives or to go a different path, and we chose the different path. And, there's probably 12 or 15 suppliers that are supplying urethane-based adhesives into the flooring industry, primarily for wood flooring installation, but also for resilient flooring as well, sports flooring and other things. Part of the EPA's concern is isocyanates that are uncured, like you would find in adhesives. Certainly isocyanates that are used in pillows and mattresses and other foam cushions and things are already cured, so they're considered inert. Mm-hmm. But it's the uncured properties of the isocyanates that are of particular concern. These have been already regulated very heavily in the EU and are mandated. There's all kinds of rules on what consumers can buy of them, and they come fully packaged with warning labels and gloves and other things. And I think that's what's being looked very seriously at by the EPA right now.
So your recommendation is that instead of using these regulated materials, they can use your MS product as opposed to using polyurethane adhesive. Is that right?
Yeah, our MS polymer products, they've been around for years. We're not the only manufacturer in the world who uses that chemistry. In fact, some of the urethane adhesive manufacturers are quite adept at selling those products over in Europe, and we sell them over there as well. And that's in reaction directly to these EU regulations. I think they've moved into alternate chemistry. So there's the major adhesive names out in the world. A lot of them do have MS-type product. The MS stands for a Modified Silane type of a product. It's moisture cure in the sense that it takes atmospheric moisture and cures and everything, just like a urethane adhesive would. And they're much easier to clean up off the surface of the wood and off of somebody's hands. And then they don't have any of the isocyanates and that type of thing that's of concern in these EPA action plans of the EU legislation.
And once they're cured, they hold just as well as these polyurethane adhesives?
Yeah, very well. In fact, we sell under our label through independent distribution throughout the country and under a lot of wood manufacturers' private labels that you're well familiar with in your magazine and your advertising and so forth. So we've been out with them we've had it out for roughly 10 years, not quite. Mm-hmm. We originally shipped it over to the UK and to the EU markets because we didn't think we had enough production to handle the U.S. market. But about 7 years ago, we introduced it out here into the U.S. market, and since that time, it's been very, very successful. It's very competitive from a price standpoint, but it has superior performance and that type of thing in a lot of ways to the urethane products. And urethanes are kind of legacy products like epoxies. They've been around since World War II, and they haven't really changed much since then. This is just much newer, modern chemistry that's brought to bear and safer as well. And, of course, we're third-party Green Guard certified and pass all those protocols as well.
Okay, great. All right, Jack, well, I appreciate you spending time with us. I just want to make sure that people knew there was a solution out there for some of these regulations. So, again, we've been talking to Jack Raidy, who's president of WF Taylor, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.